Welcome to Music and Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Moshe Lewis, in for a rare treat today with actor Hawthorne James. Extraordinary body of work, Speed, Color Purple. Of course, we all remember him dearly from the Five Heartbeats. He's been on shows like Martin, Frasier. Such a pleasure to be in your presence, young man.
My pleasure, man. My
Sure.
pleasure.
So I want to roll the clock back a little bit and just talk about your love of the theater and how that all started.
Oh, man, my love of theater started as a child, because I was born and raised in Chicago. I'm a South Side baby. Robert Townsend's a West Side baby, but that's okay. I don't want to hold it against him.
Sure.
But anyway, I went to Catholic school. And I have, there's 8 of us all together, and I have 2 older sisters and an older brother. And they were extremely popular in school, extremely popular. So when I got there, the nuns had enough of this family.
Right.
So it was like I had to find my way. I'll tell you a story, but my grandmother always told the story that my mother said. I used to stay with my grandparents' house all the time. And apparently one day I said, my mama got too many children. She forgets all about me. And I realized that was true. That's the basis of who I am. And then there was a nun called Sister Aquanette, and she did a kindergarten play every year. And what I did in the play was I became an Indian, and all I did was go around the circle, going woo 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 woo. But the drums, she chose about 5 or 6 guys to beat the drums.
Sure.
And I wanted to beat the drums, but she wouldn't let me.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I say about my life is I'm constantly trying to beat the drums.
Literally.
But when I went around in that circle, I was the best that you could ever see.
Sure.
I knew, none of these guys could touch me.
Right.
And then I realized as I'm going around, people are paying attention to me. People are looking at me. Mm-hmm. And the feeling that I got is, I guess, 6 years old, was amazing. And then you go to, I did a play in Chicago or some theater, I don't remember what it was. And then in high school, Father Barry Schneider, I went to Hales Franciscan. And Father Barry did a play every year. And he would alternate between Hamlet and Raisin in the Sun. Well, my freshman year was Raisin in the Sun. And of course, freshmen couldn't be in the play. Mm. But there was a freshman in the play. He's playing the sun.
Right.
And I went to Father Barry and I said, how come I can't be in a play? If he's a freshman, No. He's small and he's playing, okay. So the next year, Hamlet comes around. And I auditioned for the play. And I didn't get Hamlet, although I should have. Because I looked at, it was a senior who was playing Hamlet. Sure. And I was doing rehearsals and stuff. I would look at him and say, no, that's not it. That's not the way, that's not it. But of course, I played one of the guards that opened the play. I think I was Bernardo. There's Bernardo and Marcellus, and they see the ghost. But what happened was, and my mother, once again, this is a story that my mother always told. I opened my mouth and spoke the first line of the play. And her and my grandmother, and my mother and grandmother saw everything that I ever did in a play. They even flew to California to see the plays. Mm-hmm. But my mother leaned over to my grandmother and she said, after my first line, she said, is that James Herbert? Apparently, as a child, I mumbled. Mm-hmm. But when I hit that stage, it's a whole different world. Different world. And the confidence that stage. But then we moved out of Chicago to Michigan, a little place in Michigan called Vandalia, Michigan. From Chicago to Hamlet with 300 people in it. Went to Cassopolis High School. Right. Did a play in Cass. and that was Carl Chrysler was the theater director. And so there was this girl that I really liked, cute little girl, chocolate little girl. And right before I went out on stage, she came over and she kissed me.
That's it. That's all the feel you need.
I promptly went out on that stage and forgot every line I ever knew. It took me a while. I finally got it back. But to this day, I never allow a female to kiss me going on stage.
Oh, it's hard to hold them back.
It's yeah, right, whatever. But it's one of those little superstitions that I have personally about that stuff. So theater has always been a part of my life. Then by the grace of God, I don't know how, because my grades from Chicago, I was an honor student, to Michigan, and those people up there didn't give a damn about me. My grades went in the toilet. And this was during Vietnam, and I was getting ready to go to Vietnam, and somehow my father talked Brother John Driscoll. It was a brand new, it was called Holy Cross Junior College, right across, it's in South Bend, Indiana. And he would go to the doctor, in South Bend, and he took a different route one day. And it had a big billboard opening up to lay students, because it had been a school for religious brothers.
Right.
And they opened it up to lay students. So he went in and he talked him into taking me into school. So I stayed there for 2 years. And then one day I was sitting in the student lounge, because I would drive down, my mother worked in South Bend. I would drive down from Michigan with her to South Bend, drop her off at work, go back to school. And then classes stopped around 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd have to wait for her to get off work so I could go pick her up, and we'd drive back 30 miles north to Michigan. So one day I was in the student lounge by myself, as usual, and Brother John's office was right connected to the student lounge, and he called me. He said, "James, come here. I need to talk to you." So I went into his office, I sat down, and he said, he looked at me and he said, "How would you like to go to Notre Dame?" First thing in my mind was, yeah, right, whatever. It didn't come out of my mouth, but in my brain, it was like, give me a break.
Right.
But out of my mouth came, I don't have the money to be able to do that. And he looked at me and he said, "Don't worry about the money." I said, "Well, sure, I'd like to go." So he said, "Okay." End of the conversation. I got up and I left. Now, this stayed in my back of my head for a couple months, and I'm thinking, nah, this is not going to happen. In the student lounge by myself again, he came out, called me, said, "James, come here." Went back in his office, sat across from me. He said to me, "You have an appointment with the Dean of Admissions at Notre Dame on Friday at 1 o'clock. In the conversation, I got up and I left.
Exactly.
Friday came, I went to the dean. The dean had some paperwork on his desk, and I think it was an Irish name. I think it's O'Neill or something, Dean O'Neill. But anyway, he looked through it, and then he looked up at me and he said, "Okay, you're in." And then I looked at him and I said, "I don't have the money to pay for this."
Right.
He said, "Don't worry about it. You have scholarship, you have a work study, you have a student loan, and there was something else. There were 4 things how I was going to pay for this." And I was in. So I went to, and at that time, Notre Dame was all boys.
Right.
St. Mary's was the school across the street for the girls. And so my major, I went through music, I went through art, I went through English, and finally I said, "This is stupid, I know what I want." And I went into the theater department and never looked back.
Right.
So at that time, there was no graduate department at Notre Dame, so all the undergraduates got to do all the work. I was on stage constantly, the only black student in there.
Right.
But I hit it at the right time.
Right.
I hit that because those professors decided to use me. I mean, I did stuff like the seagull, Chekhov's seagull, all my family was all white. Never once was there a review or anything that said, we can't believe this. I mean, it was role after role after role. I stayed on stage. So I graduated. I'm not going to go into any kind of details, but that was one of the most racist places I'd ever been in my life. Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you one story.
That's why I was shocked that you had gone there.
Yeah, I'll tell you one story. When you declare your major, you have to have a meeting with the dean of the college. So I declared theater as my major, and I had to have a meeting with Dean Waddick. So Dean Waddick's desk was filled up the whole room, so I had to come through the door and scoot along the wall to sit in the chair, and he sat across me. And he looked at me, he said, the first thing he said was, "You aren't gonna make it here, boy." I think that's why I made it. Mm-hmm. That boy stayed in the back of my head all those years. Because there were times when I could have left. There was a time when I played baseball, and Kansas City Royals had a school in Florida, a junior college, where you would go to school in the mornings and play baseball in the afternoons. And I got accepted into that program. And I went to my mother and I said, "I think I'm going to do this." And she looked at me and she said, "Okay." But I looked at her eyes.
Right.
And I knew it was wrong. So I didn't do it. I stayed at Notre Dame. And somehow or another, I can tell you so many stories about subtle racism, sure. Okay. Not overt.
Sure.
Some of it was overt, but very subtle. Then I got a scholarship to go to the University of Michigan. And one of the things I always say is they told me you had to maintain a B average, right? Now, Notre Dame, I squeaked through graduation.
Right.
I can't lie. All my theater courses, A's. All that was A's. But the rest of the classes, like Spanish and all that stuff, so I made it. Right. I probably had got out of there with a C+ average. Right. They told me at Michigan, in order to maintain your scholarship, you have to have a B average. Now, I didn't want to appear stupid and say, "Can I get A and C?"
Right, exactly. That equals a B.
I didn't want them to think that I was an idiot. Right. So I said, okay. I came out of there with nothing but B+ and A's, even A+. Because I was able to start that whole thing from when I was a kid in Chicago, that whole academia thing, right, kicked back in, and I took it seriously. When I first got to Michigan, right, they have the season planned out. They have the 2 big fall shows, right, and then they have 2 big spring shows. Well, the spring show, the big spring show was King Lear. And from the get-go, from the time I got there, everybody and their mama said, "We know who's gonna play King Lear. Nobody else should even audition for it." And it was the white guy, the big white guy on campus. He was the big actor on campus. And in my mind, I said, I never said anything to anybody, but in my mind I said, okay, we'll see. And I kept that attitude towards that whole year. So when it came time to audition, I auditioned. And what they do is they post the cast list outside in the hallway of the school. Well, that morning they posted the cast list. There were about 10, 15 students standing around looking at the cast list, and they never saw me. And I walked to the board to look. And all of a sudden somebody saw me. And it was like Moses parting the waters. They all parted like this, staring at me. I walked over to that board, King Lear, James Hawthorne. I never said anything to anybody. I just turned around and walked away. Got about 20 feet away, you could hear the buzz. Sure. You could hear the buzz. it was, come on, man.
Sure.
What kind of feeling do you think that is?
Absolutely.
For people not to believe that you can do something, and you just say, I know me. I know me. And then after Michigan, after I got my master's, I went and taught for 2 years at Illinois State University in the theater department. And then I knew because of the politics of college, I didn't want to be a teacher.
Right. A lot of politics.
Lots of politics. So I made the decision, of course they helped make it too. They weren't going to renew my contract for various reasons. It was either go to New York or go to LA. And all my friends had gone to New York. And all my life I've been wanting to be different. So I said, my logic was, if I go to LA, if I make it in LA, everybody in New York will know me.
Right.
But if I make it in New York,
Exactly.
ain't nobody gonna know me. That Hollywood.
Exactly.
So a girl that I was dating, she moved to California, to LA. So I moved to California, and that relationship was disastrous. Thank God. She moved back to Pennsylvania, wherever the hell she's from. But that's how I got it. But she had been sending, when I was in Minneapolis that summer, she had been sending me newspaper clippings about the theaters in LA. Mm. And one of those theaters, those clippings that she sent me was from the Inner City Cultural Center, which was, they called it a multicultural theater, but it was mostly a black theater. And everybody and their mama came through that theater. I mean, Lou Gossett, Gregory Peck, he was one of the originators after the Watts Uprising. You just name the actors. My Glenn Turman, Denzel Washington, everybody that you can think of came through that theater at one time or another. And I happened to be there. And I started working there. I started getting cast in the plays there. And there's this guy named Cliff Rockmore, who was one of the greatest directors you ever wanted to meet, but unfortunately he couldn't get out of his own way. He wrote Petey Wheatstraw, which is one of Rudy Ray Moore's films, and I think he directed Petey Wheatstraw. But he wrote a film called The Disco Godfather, which is Rudy starring in that. And Cliff cast me as in my first film role in LA. I was the lead bad guy, Stingeray. I made $50 a day. I worked 2 or 3 days. I can't remember. I think it was either 2 or 3 days. Man, $50 a day?
That's a lot of money.
You couldn't tell me nothing.
Exactly.
I'm making $50 a day, man. That was a fortune to me. But more importantly, it set me on the road to where I was going. Because the first day, I'm sitting in a chair. I've got the director in this ear. I've got the sound guy in this ear. I've got the wardrobe tugging at me. I've got somebody shining shoes. I've got, everybody's talking to me. Everybody's just giving me instructions and stuff. So it was a big scene for me. I had a big speech to say outside. And the whole crew, just like everybody in there, this whole crew, looking at me. Right. And it was the end of the day, and they wanted to go home. So I got this big scene to do, and I'm sitting here, oh my God, I gotta get through it. And I got through it. But I went home that night, and I talked to myself, and I said, look here, you know what you're doing. What is your problem? Calm down. Just, if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. So what? So what they want to go home? This is me. This is my career.
Right.
So the next day, I got there that morning, and out of the blue, here comes this girl from, I think she was Miss Black Pennsylvania or Miss Black Philadelphia or something. She walks onto the set. The producers had forgotten they promised her a role in the movie. And here she comes.
Right, for her role.
For her role. They don't know what to do with her. So lo and behold, they say, let's make him Stingeray's wife. Make her Stingeray's wife. So Cliff was at the desk writing the scene that we were going to do. And I'm standing over looking over his shoulder. And Cliff finishes writing the scene. And he says, okay, you want to rehearse it? No. And I said, no, let's shoot it. I had memorized it as he was writing it. Sure. Because my whole being had changed. Sure. Woosah. And I got it in one take. So these are the baby steps. That's why I want kids to understand. It's like, yeah, you can make a big splash when you're 20, 30 years old. But what's going to happen when you're 40? What's going to happen with your 50? Do you want a career or do you want to be some kind of flash in the pan star?
Right.
These things take time. And there's nothing better than the gratification. It's like people think Big Red came out of nowhere. No, the Big Red was years of study. Big Red, there's Shakespeare in Big Red.
Right, that's why I wanted you to cover that background, because I think that may be lost, that you were pulling from some King Lear and some Richard III.
Yeah, Richard III, okay. Ted Lance, who played the bartender on Love Boat.
Right.
Teddy, I worked with Teddy a couple of times. I did Othello. And Ted Lance was the first black man to play Othello on screen. They give credit to Fishburne. No. Teddy was the first black man to do it for a major motion picture. And it did get some kind of distribution. But anyway, Teddy got me a scholarship to study over in London. So I was in London, and Richard III became my favorite play. Because it's Richard III kills his uncle, some relative to become king. I can't remember that, God dog it. But anyway, he becomes king. And over the casket, he woos the king's wife, Lady Anne. Right. And she becomes his queen. Now this is a hunchback, right, crippled dude who is now king. So anyway, that stayed in my mind. I've always wanted to do it. I never got a chance to do the role, but anyway, years and years later, right? Well, comes the 5 Heartbeats. In the script, I wasn't in the funeral scene. And I went to Robert and I said, Robert, I need to be in the funeral scene. And he says, yeah, you do. I said, great. So, come shooting day, one of the shooting days, we were shooting at my house when I tell Jimmy to get lost. That was in the morning. So the night before, Robert hadn't written anything for me, the funeral scene. So I said, what am I going to do? So I sat down and I wrote that funeral scene. Mm-hmm. All that stuff that you see in that film, I wrote that. So we were driving back to the church on Adams and Vermont. That's where we shot the funeral scene. So I had this piece of paper in my hand that I had written, and I didn't know Robert. So the producer was sitting in the back. Robert was sitting right behind me. And so I finally got enough courage to say, Robert, I think I ought to say this. So I handed it back to him, right? Right. And he looked at it and he was real quiet. He said, okay. But he edited it down, because you know me, I'm a write me some stuff. Right. But so what you see is what he edited down to. So that's what I wrote that whole thing with me and Eleanor. Because in my mind, it's not written on the page. In my mind, I'm mad at Jimmy all the time because he stole Eleanor from me. Right. Eleanor is mine. Right. That's why I'm angry all the time at Jimmy. So at the funeral, Richard III comes up. He's in his casket, and I'm in her face, right, trying to get her back. That's Shakespeare in the 5 Heartbeats. Mm-hmm. So you use all the stuff that you have. You may think it's not going to work. It's throwaway stuff, but knowledge. I read all the time. I'm on Facebook constantly, not for the recipes, right, But the people are talking, and I'm being educated about things that we don't know about ourselves as Black people. I mean, every day I go on Facebook, I see another story about what happened. Like I'm trying to get a story together about this Black sheriff who white folks started disappearing once he became sheriff. But we don't get to see those types of things because that's dangerous for the other folks.
Right.
And that happened constantly. You would think that we were sitting on the plantation going, hey, Dad, pick some cotton. Yeah, boy, I love me some cotton.
Right.
No. We were plotting how to get the frick out of there.
Right.
But they don't show you that because that's dangerous. Then you become Haiti,
Right.
where you rise up. So they don't want you to know that, but that was constant. It's not about me anymore because no matter where I go in the world, people know me. So how much of that can fulfill you? It's about education, and it's about getting that baby, that 2-year-old, that 5-year-old, that 6-year-old, that 10-year-old, to understand who they are and how great they can be. That's what I care about now.
I love it.
And that's the only thing, people ask me all the time to do stuff, and I turned a lot of it down. I said, no, ain't got nothing to do. And I've turned down over $1 million in one sitting. I've turned down a lot of money, and I was almost homeless at one point. But I can't do stuff. I refuse to do certain things.
On that note, I wanted to make sure we would be remiss to not cover The Color Purple and working on that project.
Oh, boy. See, my last 9-to-5 job, I was one of the highest Black executives in Hollywood. I was head of the post-production ancillary markets at TriStar. Mm-hmm. One day, one of the secretaries said, you need to read this book. And so I was sitting on the desk. I picked it up and started leaving through it. I read about 2-3 pages, threw it back down and said, I hate this. It was The Color Purple. So, cut to a couple months later, Teddy sponsored an acting audition at Inner City, and I won the acting competition that year. And Reuben Cannon, who cast The Color Purple, was one of the judges for the finals. So Reuben called me in to audition for The Color Purple. I went in there and I tried to be bad, because that's how much I hated it. So I got a call back. My agent said, Spielberg likes your tape. He wants to read again. So I went in and I tried to be worse. God said, you dumb ass, I'm giving you something.
Right.
Take the job, you dummy. And I got the job. And it was and I worked a week. And I made buco money. I mean, once again, these are $50 a day.
Right, we're long past that.
No. This was buco money. And we had overtime. Of course, the movie turned out to be a blockbuster. And the performances in there were, Danny Glover, what can you say?
Right.
Nobody knew who Whoopi was really. Some people knew that she was a comedian, but nobody knew Oprah.
Sure.
She would come through the set, nobody talked to nobody, but anyway. But, okay, that being said, cut to 5 years later, I leave TriStar. We mutually part ways.
Sure. In a manner of speaking.
In a manner of speaking. And I didn't know how to pay my rent. I didn't have any money to pay my rent. I go to the mailbox, and there's a check from The Color Purple. That's God saying to you, take the job, dummy.
Right.
I know you may not feel about it the way you're supposed to, but I'm giving you the opportunity.
Sure.
But cut to years later and stuff, I have turned down a lot of money. I wrote a play called Remember Me. And you can see it on YouTube. What I did, I produced a short film out of it, trying to raise the money to do the whole thing. It's on YouTube called Remember Me with a question mark. It's about two sisters and their relationship and how they grew apart. They were very close as kids, grew apart. They were middle-class kids, grew apart. One becomes an activist in DC, the other marries a doctor. The doctor loses his way. So there's a cabin that's been in the family for years, since they were children. So the activist goes up to be by herself. The other sister brings her husband up there to work on a relationship of theirs, and they get stuck in the cabin. And they have to, and the two sisters finally see each other after all these years. One of them, the one that's activist, has cancer. She goes up there to essentially kill herself. But they had worked through their problems. I did it as a play first at Inner City, and it was very successful. And my agent sent it to 20th Century Fox and Warner Brothers. And they both decided they wanted it. Close to, it was like $999,999.
Right.
They were offering me. And, oh man, here I come. They came back to me, my agent said, oh, by the way, they want to know if the sisters can be white. I said, give my damn script back. I didn't write this for two white women to become stars. I wrote this for two black women to give them the shot to show them what they could do. So that $1 million went out the window. Right. You know, I'm not trying to say that I sacrificed myself. I'm not Martin Luther King. I'm not Malcolm.
Right.
Period. But what I'm saying is there comes a point at which you have to just say no. If you don't say no, then who's going to say no? You know, and I've done that all my life. Because it's something, it just seems right to me. And I'm not going to play that Hollywood game. I'm not bending over for nobody. Man, I love what I do. I don't care if I'm getting no pay, if I'm making $50 or I'm making, $10,000 a day. It doesn't matter to me. When I walk onto that set, it's like being right here, right now. This is so exciting to me. You asked me, a kid from the south side of Chicago who didn't have enough to eat, to be on your show. You know what that means to me? That's the world to me. This means more than any amount of money. God don't have enough money to make it feel better. Because this world has got to change, man. It's got to change. I'm tired of this. You know, my brothers went to Vietnam, came home. Some of them died there, some of them came back, and you wouldn't recognize them.
Very true.
When does it stop? When do these people say enough is enough? I'm tired, man. I'm tired of this.
Right.
I'm tired of people bombing each other.
Sure. Yeah.
Unnecessarily. And my art is the only place, is the place where I can make a difference sometimes. And I'm not going to compromise that.
As a take-home message, do you feel that that's, as people look over your body of work, which is so many people would be proud to have some of the projects that you've done, is that the message you hope people take away?
I hope so. I really do. I hope so, because sometimes I think to myself, I haven't done anything. Because there's so much more that I want to do. I'm constantly trying to help other people out, but I tell them, I read their scripts and I say, look, this has got to be, and then sometimes they'll go back they'll change it, and then they'll go back to the producers, and the producers will say, nah.
Can't do that.
So I say, I'm passing on it. I needed that money, but I'm passing on it. I can't do everything. I just can't.
To thine self be true.
Yeah. If you do everything, you have no integrity. You know, I look at some of the stuff that people do and I say, God bless you, but I can't do it. I cannot do that. But it's like when I turn down something, there's 1,000 guys behind me
Right.
that are going to do it. Won't do it as well as I do it, but it gets done, you know? And I look at all the history of film and television. I look at Oscar Michaud, and, you know, you get to see every once in a while, you get to see something he did. And it's silent films, you know, it's no-budget films. But there's something there, there's a spark there that tells everybody you can do this. You know, I look at some of the films in the early 70s, like Shaft. It's like it's not it doesn't have the same impact as it did then, I don't think. But when I looked at Shaft, it was like, wow. But there are not enough Shafts. I mean, you got the Pimp movie, Superfly. Yeah, you get those, and they're just not. I mean, they're pretty well made, but they're not that black man standing up and winning.
Right.
That's the key. I directed a film called The Stick-Up Kids. First film I did with this producer, Tariq Alexander, was The System Within. And Tariq, he gave the script to Melvin, and he read it, and he came back to Tariq and said, look, don't ever have your hero die, because in their scripts, they'll kill you. So why are you writing it that you die? That's something I've always believed in already, but Tariq took the script, and his hero didn't die. Right. So that's the important thing. Your heroes have to be. You know, people are going to look at me and say, you're crazy. But I hate Django with a passion.
Because?
The reason being, if you remember the scene where Django and the white guy are passing by and these guys are going to lynch this black man. Django stops. The wagon stops, and they watch this. The white guy says, we got to save that guy. Django says, no, I got to go get my woman. Can you imagine Clint Eastwood?
Right.
Can you imagine Schwarzenegger? Can you imagine any of those white heroes saying, forget that guy, I got to go get my woman? Right. I want to use the other word.
Sure.
But can you imagine that? A hero would have saved the guy and gone and got his woman. That's why I hate that movie. Because we're not heroes. We're cowards. And that thing goes around the world. Around the world. You know, I've had Japanese women come to me talking about, it's you, it's you. I've sat in Brazil and had women on the corners, it's you, it's you. Around the world, people see these films. Right. The brothers in Vietnam always told me, they said, the Vietnamese women, when they tried to get with them, a lot of the Vietnamese women would say, Tubiki, Tubiki. Where did you get that from? They wanted you to turn around and show them your tail, because they believed you had a tail. Where did they get that from? Film, television, books.
Right.
This stuff that I do goes around the world. It represents you. It represents all those black females. And I'm going to contribute to that? Nah, you got the wrong one, partner. You got the wrong one. It's not going to happen. Somebody else is going to do it, but not me.
Those things that at this point bring you joy. Obviously, you're still looking at some scripts and taking on projects that you enjoy, but what brings you joy and happiness?
My wife. Drives me crazy. but she brings me joy and happiness every day. We bought a house in Vegas. I've always, as an adult, lived in apartment buildings. I sit out in my backyard, and we actually put a pool in. I don't know how in the world we did it. We're struggling to pay for this stuff every day. But so far, for the last 5 years, we've been able to maintain it. But that's what brings me joy, sitting out in that backyard. I got a meeting tonight with a young lady who has tried for years to get some stuff done. And she's going to try again, and she wants me to come and be a part of her project. That brings me joy. There's another young lady who works her butt off, who I've never met. Somehow or another, she called me up on the phone one day, and for the last 15, 20 years, I've been talking to her, mentoring her. That's what brings me joy. Period. You know, and I still love what I do. I love making movies. You know, and I've been fortunate enough to have been involved in some really good movies lately. I've got one called Mr. Gates, which is out now. Another called The Daughters of Dolomite. Yes. Rudy Ray Moore coming back to the circle. Yes. But it's a film that one of his managers, you know, produced, and it should be out this summer. They're not great art, maybe, because they're young filmmakers, and they'll get better. I've got a film I can't wait to see. I did in North Carolina. It's called In the Matchbox. Now, they did it as a short, and that film, I won Best Actor in so many film festivals across the U.S. The film is won, so they decided to do it as a feature. And looking at the trailer that they sent me, no money, but this thing, Mike Anderson takes this seriously, and it looks tremendous. I can't wait to see it. But that's what brings me joy, working with these young kids and supporting them.
Absolutely. And we look forward to it and so appreciate having Hawthorne James with us. So many words of wisdom and pearls that come down to being authentic, being true, putting quality over quantity, and many times that means not accepting a check for everything and not compromising.
That means being broke. That's the bottom line. That means being broke a lot of times. Thank God for, and I do have to say this. Let me say, Doris. She works for me. It's like she came with me this time because I needed somebody to do certain work for me. She becomes an assistant for me. But the importance of having someone in your life that supports you, doesn't question you all the time. You know, questions you just enough to make you think. I don't mind being challenged, because if you're not challenged, you're not growing. You know, it's like the best directors in the world. Robert Townsend, you have no clue what I bring. I bring the kitchen sink. I throw it all at you.
Really?
And as a director, you have to tell me no. Hawthorne, come here. Let me talk to you for a minute. Come here.
On stage.
Nah, that's not. But there was a line in the 5 Heartbeats, which when I first meet the kids, and I'm talking to them, and I'm saying, I'm just an old country boy, and I'm giving them the spiel about why they should come with me, and then Eleanor and Jimmy show up, and so the line was written, Eleanor, you are as beautiful as ever. I went to Robert, and I said, Robert, let me say it in French. He said, no, that's not gonna work. We went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And finally he said, oh, go ahead and do it. Go ahead and do it. So I'm just an old country boy, but I work hard for my artists. And then I see Eleanor, and it becomes, Eleanor, tu es plus belle que jamais. Well, you just got through telling them kids you're just a country boy.
Right.
Now all of a sudden you're speaking French.
Right.
Well, see, what that does is that tells you who that character is. It also tells you there's a relationship, a history between him and Eleanor. And also cuts the husband out because he doesn't speak French. So on all those different levels, that one line tells you a lot about this whole picture. Mm-hmm. Those are the things that I'm looking for. I'm looking for those type of things. And 2 months after the film came out, Robert called me and he said, "You were right." That one I was. I mean, there's plenty of stuff that he said no to. But sometimes you have to fight for what you believe in and fight for that character, find that character. And like I say, I reached back from London for a part of it. I reached back for other films and I watch people. I watched everybody in this room. I watched them, how they eat, how they talk. You know, the accents. I did one film the System Within. I was there for 2 weeks and I was working with the actors. He asked me to work with actors. And this Jamaican guy drove me, was the driver for me. And I'm trying to find this character. I'm saying, who is this guy? Blah, 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 blah. And the day before we started shooting, I looked at the driver and I said, "That's who he is. He's Jamaican." So I made him Jamaican in the film. His name is Hayes, so I thought about Hayes. You know, so it all falls into place. But you got to work at it. You got to think about it. It's 24/7. That you have to think. When I accept, if you're a nobody, or you're Steven Spielberg, and I'm one of the only actors in the world that's worked in 2 Spielberg movies. It doesn't matter to me whether you're nobody or Steven. It doesn't matter to me. If I give you my word that I'm going to do your job, you're going to get the same amount of work from me as he gets. It doesn't matter. My word is everything to me. It doesn't matter how much I'm making. I gave you my word. And that's what's important.
And it means so much to us. I knew when you said yes, that yes wasn't maybe. We're so appreciative not only of the work, but the depth of the character behind it that I think many times we may not always appreciate without having these kind of conversations. Thank you for that sincerity. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for staying true.
Well, I do have to say, it's not for you to know. It's for me to show. You don't know what I did to make that character work. But that's a problem today with these younger kids. They see it, but they don't see the work. They think it's easy. All you gotta do is learn some lines. Right. No, it's not easy. But we make it look easy.
Right.
That's our job. So it's not for you to know. It's like the story about Eleanor and all of the 5 heartbeats, little stuff. Does it make any difference that you know now? Well, I guess it may, but at the point where most people don't know that. They just know that that character resonates with them.
Right.
And that's the important thing for me. 30-some years later, and people still come to me. 5- and 6-year-old kids come to me.
Right.
And say, "Big Red, oh, wow. I'm still that kid from the south side of Chicago. You asked me to take a picture with you, it's like, wow. You want to take a picture with me? That's the way I'm feeling inside. You want me to come to here to do your show? Wow. What an honor it is to be here.
Likewise. We are truly grateful. Thank you so much.
All right, Doc.
Sure. Till next time.
Yes, sir.